Hi everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm really excited because we're talking about some of my favourite topics, gut health, colonics and enemas and poop, with one of my favourite people in the world, Mel. Mel is a very experienced colon hydrotherapist and she is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to gut health. So I'm so excited to soak up all her words of wisdom, and I'm sure you guys will love her too. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Oh, thank you. So I wanted to talk about this topic today because people are really waking up to the fact that it is so important to create a healthy gut in regards to achieving optimal health. And I personally believe that colonics and enemas play such a crucial part in that process, but it is also a very controversial topic. So I can't wait to dive deep and sort of bust some myths around the topic of colonics and enemas. And personally, enemas and colonics have not just played an important role in my healing journey, but more like an essential role in my healing journey. I don't know if I would be where I am today with my gut health if it wasn't for them. So I'm really excited to share this information with everyone. So I've got a whole heap of questions from you guys, like the most frequently asked questions about all of these topics. So we're just going to go through those and get Mel to answer them for us. So let's get started.
Let's get started.
So Mel, I just want you to share a little bit about your backstory in regards to health and how you've come to become a colon hydrotherapist today, just so that it can help people relate to you more.
Yep, good. Okay, so, well, if I go back a little bit in time, I've always been very interested in health and physical education. Mm-hmm. So my background is an educator. So I'm from the teaching realm. Mm-hmm. And I spent...
Perfect.
Yeah, I spent 20 years in education. So I got my diploma of education back in 1991, not 1891.
Not that old.
No, not that old. And then the following year I did my Bachelor of Education, and then my major for my Bachelor was Health and Physical Education. So I've always had that kind of vested interest anyway. So coming from that platform, it was kind of like a natural progression that I was going to probably move into something health-related. Mm-hmm. So I also, when I was younger, when I was a child, I was a very sick child. I had chronic asthma and eczema, and I spent a lot of time in hospital, a lot of time on medications, preventative medications and curative medications. And I think over time and distance, once I got into my mid-30s, things started to appear, like just the telltale signs of being toxic.
Things started to accumulate.
Correct. Yeah. So I started to, I didn't have regular bowel movements. That was one thing. I ended up having bilateral vein surgery, which in hindsight, had I known something about natural healing, I probably wouldn't have gone under the knife. And just to clarify what bilateral vein surgery is, when you end up having varicose veins, and obviously some of it can be related to your DNA and, you know, obviously what you get that's carried through the generations. They do say that sometimes it can be hereditary, but a lot of it is related to lack of bowel movement. So you usually get a lot of pooling blood in the left side of your body because that's the elimination side of the body. So like
it becomes really stagnant.
Yeah, stagnant blood. So because the lymphatics aren't working as well as what they should be, the blood pools in the area of the body that's furthest from the heart.
Okay.
And it doesn't work its way back up to be oxygenated again. So I ended up with very ropey, painful veins. So anyway, so bilateral vein surgery is basically they cut you in the groin, an inch cut on either side, and they strip the veins that aren't, working anymore. So it was a horrendous operation. And I suppose it was after that and a couple of mental breakdowns and a few other things that were kind of going on in life. And I was smoking and drinking and, you know, doing all those things that you kind of do in the 80s and 90s, and you think you're having a wonderful time, and then your body just goes, I don't think so. I'm done with that.
Bam.
Yeah, exactly. So it was around 2007 I started seeing a Chinese herbalist. And she obviously put me on some Chinese herb concoctions, and I was having a lot of Chinese and ancient deep tissue massage, and she also used acupuncture needles that had little kind of holes in the end of them, and she injected high doses of echinacea into my lymph nodes. Within about 3 months, I started to feel different, and that was when colon hydrotherapy started to come into my own personal protocol and management for my health.
Who introduced that to you?
Well, this is interesting too, because her name was Dr. Elizabeth R. Chu. Not R. Chu. R. Chu. Make sure that you separate them. And she had mentioned to me that obviously one important aspect of starting to eliminate some of the old crud out of the system through toxic overload of medications and stress and all the things that had been going on in the past was to try colon hydrotherapy.
Okay.
So that's how it started. And so that became a really important part of my healing.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And did you fall in love with them straight away? Like, were you nervous to go into colon hydrotherapy?
Very, very nervous. And unfortunately, my first experience wasn't a good experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's really important to have a hydrotherapist that you connect with.
Right,
and so that has a huge role to play in what your experience is like when you have your treatment. So the lady that I went to wasn't a very experienced colon hydrotherapist. I know I shouldn't say that, but the amount of knowledge and the information that was given to me at the beginning was very basic. And I was told at the end, if I wanted to feel better, I could go to the local shop and get a Mars bar, and that would help me feel, that would bring the sugar levels back into my blood and I would feel better. And I just went, yeah, okay, this doesn't resonate with me. So I went on a search then. I thought, right, I need to find someone that I can connect with, someone that is healthy and walking the talk and talking the walk.
This is such an important point.
It is.
Because it wasn't until I found Mel, really, that you completely changed my colon hydrotherapy experiences, because you're the first colon hydrotherapist I've found who actually cultivates that holistic lifestyle, plant-based approach. Yeah.
So I think that was the really important part of, well, I do want to continue having this great, hydrotherapy. I want to keep having this, but I need to find someone that I can connect with, which I did. Okay, and that was when I was living in Melbourne. Okay. So it basically became part of my maintenance.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. And then you got your...
Yeah, so then what happened was I met Simone Jones from the Colonic Clinic in Burleigh, and I met her at the Don Tolman base camp in 2012. Okay, yeah. She was on my table, and she had her own colon hydrotherapy clinic. And I remember walking in there and saying to her, I'm going to be working here one day. I just knew that it was going to happen. So from there, I did the training, became certified, worked there for a couple of years. I moved to Brisbane with my partner, and we opened our pure water shop, and then I was kind of missing the connection that I was having with clients and helping them on their pathway to healing and eliminating all their old crud and feeling great and getting them on a good plant-based diet and so I said to Michael, I think it's time we open up. So that's what we did.
It's a very obvious passion of yours.
Yeah, I really love it.
Kids never see you not doing it.
Yeah, I really love it. So that's how it kind of all started. So we opened up here January last year. Yeah. And I have lovely clients. It isn't a big show here. It's more of a boutique-y type of setup. And it's interesting because obviously when you first open up your own clinic, you'll have a lot of people coming in because it's a, you're new and it's a lot of interest and a lot of buzz. But then what you do as a hydrotherapist is you start to attract the people that need you.
Yeah.
So
that's what you're finding.
Exactly. So I'm getting people that are very much valuing their health. And as I was, back when I was getting sick, I was sick and tired of being tired and sick. And a lot of the people that come here are in that boat. They're over feeling shit.
And you've walked that path, so you can really
I have,
help them.
yeah. So I think if I'm looking well and I'm vibrant and positive and I'm having regular colonics,
Which she always is.
yeah, and you know, I'm embracing the principles of health, and I'm doing everything to ensure that when I'm sharing my experiences with my clients, they can see that I'm actually doing what I'm saying that I do.
Walking the talk.
Yeah, it's so important to walk the talk, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that all started.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
And this to me is like a really powerful description, and I just wanted to know why you thought it was called that.
You know, it's interesting when I actually received the questions and I saw that one, I thought, oh, the river of life or the river of death. Straight away I got a visual of a picture or a page out of the base camp manual that we actually received during base camp with Don Tolman. And he actually has a section in there that he went into great detail about, well, you know, the river of life and the river of death is pretty much, well, if we refer to the digestive system, sorry, we're just taking a chart off the wall. If we're referring to the large intestine, which is here, as your river or your canal, then basically what he says is, well, you pretty much have a choice. It depends on what you're floating down your canal, as to whether it's going to be your river of life or river of death.
Yeah.
So some of the things that he was talking about are pretty much like, well, if you're thinking about a river that's free-flowing and very natural and alive, it's like an analogy to say, well, okay, so it would be indicative of regular bowel movements, like short transit times between 4 and 8 hours, so pretty much having a meal and with half an hour to an hour having a bowel movement, which is not that meal but the previous meal to that's coming away.
It's pushing through the previous
Correct.
meal. Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with fasting. You know, I am a firm believer of fasting at least 4 times a year and preferably 1 day a week. Just
juice or water
or herbal teas just for the day, you know, and then having a light meal at night. Light salad or a soup.
Just giving your colon a break.
Give it a break. Yeah, give it a break. So the river of life obviously is to do with those things, and it's to do with, when I look at that picture, I think, well, it's about eliminating. It's about making sure that your body's not deficient and it's not toxic. I also believe that the river of life has to do with embracing the principles of health, chewing your food really well, squatting to poop. And I think one of the most important things is to view your body as your temple. It's your home. You know, we only get one body. We only get one chance at honouring it. Yeah. And so the river of life for me kind of means that, well, you need to be respecting what's going into it. Yeah. Because it will tell you if it's not happy, if you're putting the wrong things in.
And if it's a river of death, as they say, it's stagnant, it's clogged up, and all of that then ripples out into the rest of your body and into the rest of your life as well. So your thoughts are stagnant, your life becomes stagnant.
Shitty bowel, shitty thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all connected.
Literally.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And so I also see the river of life as ensuring that you are spectrum eating. So you're eating all the colours of the rainbow, okay? Because obviously then you know that you're going to be feeding all the systems in the body so that it's happy. So the digestive system loves green and red foods, you know. So if you're smashing your greens, your digestive system's going, yay, because those foods are alive and electrical, and the peristaltic action starts not just in the bowel but in the entire digestive system. You put a freshly plucked apple off a tree and you chew it, your whole digestive system is having an internal party. It's like, yeah, bring it on.
I know what this is.
Bring it on, exactly. So, and then the river of death, without sounding, you know, too negative, but I just think of things like a cesspool, you know, sludge, toxic residue, a constant internal struggle, you know. Transit time for some people can be anything from 3 days to 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
I've had clients that don't pass a movement for 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, I guess that was me. Yeah.
Oh, darling, really?
Yeah, once every 2 weeks.
Oh, my gosh.
And that stuff, it doesn't just disappear. Like, it's inside of you, putrefying and fermenting.
That's right. And being reabsorbed into the body via the blood.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's quite a controversial thing. People say that that's not possible.
Well, let me give you an example. Someone's really busy and they don't attend to nature's call. So they're at work, they're busy, they get nature's call and they go, oh, I'll just wait. And then they get home and go, oh, it's gone away. And people don't second guess that and think, oh, it's gone away. If nature calls you and you're not responding to that, what happens to that poop? It sits in the walls of the bowel, it putrefies. Some of it gets sent back through the blood system into the liver, and the liver's like, what are you doing, bowel? We called you. Why didn't you respond? Why didn't you eliminate it? And then people do this day after day after day. The brain and the gut go, well, bugger you. You're not attending to nature's call, so we're not giving you the response anymore. The response won't come anymore. So, and then they get bound up and bound up and bound up, and then we hit the laxatives, which is another whole thing that we'll talk about later on. But so you've got to attend to nature's call, and I suppose that goes back to honouring your body. You know, your body is your temple. You know, so if you're not
it's smart, it knows what it's doing.
Correct.
We just need to learn to work with it.
Exactly. So if nature calls you,
go,
go, and squat to poo, knees to knipples.
Oh yes,
you've got to squat like they did anciently, like babies do.
Exactly.
You know, when they're in their nappies and they need to go, they'll go and hide behind a curtain somewhere and they squat.
Before all this programming and...
Exactly. So it's, that's another whole thing about, you know, appendix being removed, and it's usually through lack of squatting to poo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the river of life and the river of death, and I suppose we have a choice, don't we?
Yeah.
We can either see our bowel as the river of life, that everything is free-flowing, or the river of death, where it just becomes a toxic, stagnant cesspool of shit.
So before you eat anything, ask yourself, is this going to help to create a river of life or a river of death? Yeah, perfect. A big question I always get is, what is the difference between a colonic and an enema? Yeah,
okay, good question. So they're really not that different in I suppose approach or technique, or however you like to call it. It just depends on what sort of colon hydrotherapy you choose to go with. So pretty much an enema will soak probably about 8 to 10 inches of the descending part of the bowel. So we're talking about that much of the beginning of the bowel. So we might just pick the chart up. So obviously the water moves in via a tube, and it will soak kind of the lower part, which is called the descending part of the colon and the sigmoid.
Okay.
So it doesn't go in as far as what a colonic would. Okay, so that's pretty much, that's one difference.
Okay.
And it involves attaching a bag that kind of looks like a hot water bottle. You have a bag attached to a hook or a doorknob that's obviously higher than your head and your bum, so that you get that gravity effect, and a small tube will be then inserted into your bottom, and then it's pretty much moving the water into the lower part of your bowel and then attempting to hold on to it for as long as you can to soak that lower part of your bowel, so that you can eliminate the poop that's kind of in that area.
Just the lower
part. Okay. The interesting part about that too is, and I'll talk about it later when I talk about different management plans, but I do actually encourage my clients to have enemas between their treatments. Yeah. So the enema becomes part of the maintenance. Yeah. So I don't, because the thing is, you know, a lot of people have to factor having colonics in their budgeting as well. So it becomes part of a, you know,
program.
Exactly. So if they're doing enemas between time, it continues to allow the bowel to flow and shift.
Yeah.
Between
just keeps the river of life moving.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. So it's really important. So now with a colonic, it's the system that I have is a gravity-fed system. So it's almost like an automated enema. It's like the luxury version. An enema is like the Holden, the Holden version.
The car.
Yeah, and an open system colon hydrotherapy session is like the Rolls Royce.
Right, yeah.
Because you're not having to take the tube out to eliminate.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
So that's one of the main differences. So a lot of clients will say to me, yes, I do enemas, but it's so much nicer coming to you, Melissa, because I can just get in there and
Relax,
the water gently moves in, and when I need to release, I don't need to remove the tube. I can just release and fill up again and release, and it's a lot more relaxing than the manual version.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
like, quick, get out.
Yeah, exactly. So an enema and a colonic both use body temperature water, filtered water.
That's important.
And so the machine in there regulates it. It kind of moves from a lower body temperature up to a higher. So it allows for the bowel to expand and contract. Yeah. Expand and contract.
Okay, that's what the temperature does.
That's what the temperature on it does, and it's filtered water, so it's filtered by a UV light purifier, and we have a carbon cartridge in the machine as well. So it's all very clean that goes into your bottom. And there's no mess and no fuss. So basically the little rectal tube goes into your bottom, you insert it yourself with the open system, and it's just a 40-45 minute process of water gently moving in. Okay, so it's not being forced in, it's gently moving in. And the beautiful thing about this system too is that you're attending and reacting and responding to your nature's call. So what will happen is as the water's moving in, you get a bit of a, I think I need to go to the toilet, and the brain and the gut go, we need to poo, and you respond by gently releasing the water away. And then it'll slowly start to move in again, and you'll get nature's call. And the most beautiful thing for me is when someone comes in that's chronically constipated, they haven't had nature's call in years, and they get in there and go, oh my gosh, it feels so good to get nature's call and to release. And so for some, and then what that does then is it stimulates the bowel to work more effectively on its own. See, because there is a lot of misconception out there that if you have colon hydrotherapy, it's going to weaken your bowel. Your bowel will
big thing.
Yes, and it's like, no, it's on the contrary. It's the other way around. It's not true. It actually
naturally stimulates your
It naturally stimulates the bowel to start moving again because it's attending to nature's call. It's almost like an internal weight training session for the bowel.
So you can't overwork that muscle.
No way. No, that peristaltic action is what it's designed to do. But over time and distance and, shitty food and stress and pollution and all the things that people are exposed to, everyone is, the bowel is the thing that suffers the most. Yeah. Because everything just gets harboured there and stored there.
And with the open system, you can also see stuff coming out of the tube as well.
You can, yes. Another video, my dear.
I think so.
So on the Libby unit, it has a well where the waste goes down, and then there's a 1.5 kind of view tube, so that you actually see the waste coming out before it goes into the sewer. Some people think that I'm out here with a lab coat on and I'm analysing the waste that comes out, but I don't. No. But then having said that, in the closed system, which is a very different system, so that the Libby is a small pencil thin tube, so it's no bigger than the tip of a pen or a pencil. It only goes in about an inch to a half inch.
It's kind of like an enema tube.
Exactly like an enema tube. Whereas with the closed system, which is the traditional system, the therapist inserts a fairly large speculum into the bottom, and it's about 12 to 15 centimetres in length, and it has it's a larger kind of instrument that goes into the bottom. Yes, and it has two tubes within that, so it has one major. I always
wondered how that works.
Yeah, one major tube in the centre.
Yeah,
and then it has a small connection on the top. The small connection on the top infuses water into the bowel at a safe, regulated pressure. So they actually have like an analog dial that shows how much pressure as the water's moving in. Okay. And then the therapist then pushes like a little kind of trigger on the end, and that then pulls the waste out of the bowel. So it's a process of water being pushed in and waste being moved out. And you're on your side. The therapist does the inserting. And look, I'm not here to say my system's better than that system, because it is a very personal thing. Yeah, I've had clients that have tried both, and I think probably one of the greatest pieces of feedback that I get from clients is that this is more private.
Yes,
because they're in the room. I mean, we have a bell for assistance, and I can be in the room if people want me in there. I can be in and out. I basically gauge it on how my clients want their session to run. But a lot of people say, Mel, that's good. Let's start us off, and I'm happy to just do my 45 minutes. You can check on me every now and then, but I'm happy to be in here in the privacy of my own space. Yeah. Whereas with the closed system,
the therapist is always there,
pushing the water in and moving the waste away.
So they're more in control rather than your body being in control.
So you can't actually, you have no control over nature's call, because nature's call is being kind of created for you with the closed system.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think with the open system, you have more time to soak the bowel, because it's more like an enema. You can kind of hold the water in and just push out small kind of parts of water or volumes of water before you actually release like all the way. So it's called the soaking method. That's what it's actually called. So water moves in, and rather than releasing all the water when nature calls you, you release it in small surges. So it's just like, so you're really trying to hold the water in and soak the bowel. And then when your brain goes, okay, we've had enough of doing the soaking now.
It's time to move.
So you release all the water that's moved into the bowel. Okay, and you can't do that with the closed system. So this is you're more in touch with nature. Yeah. As in your nature's call.
Okay. That's a good explanation of the difference. So I guess it's just up to you what you prefer.